I moved to California because I wanted to see a different coast. As an aspiring ocean creature biologist, it is important that I study different areas. I don't feel at home here. People do things so differently, and I keep having the feeling that something is lacking. There is beauty, sure. The glistening of the ocean in the sun is as captivating as the dark waves are terrifying under the stars. I enjoy the green of the flora. Back home, the leaves are always crisp and orange-brown, except during the 12 days of winter, when everything is dark and barren. Still, I miss the fog gently clouding homes as people arise from their slumber. The bright, bright orange of the pumpkins. There are fewer colors here in California. Everything is pastel, like a painting. I even miss the harpies screeching over the water and over the castle walls, although I've grown quite fond of the seagulls they have here. But I will tell you something that I don't miss about home. Plague. Apparently, California has never been affected by the Black Plague, although it did wipe out about 70% of a place called Europe across the Atlantic. I think that was a long time ago, though. The subject came up when my roommate noticed that I washed my hands quite often, at least 10 times a day, in accordance with plague prevention regulations. I also learned how to craft a wellness potion, which I sprayed all over the furniture at least once a week. I make sure to keep a penny jar, in case the plague doctor comes by to collect his taxes. It is a constant concern for the people of Oddfolk, New Hampshire. I tried to explain to my roommate that you need to wash your hands and bathe frequently, because that's how you prevent disease. I was surprised that his mother had never taught him that, but I kept that to myself. He laughed at me. "What are you worried about? Ebola?" he asked. "No," I told him. "The Black Death." He laughed again, patted me on the shoulder, and called me a weirdo. Then he told me about the Black Plague, and how it is no longer a threat in most of the world. I think that means that we are friends now. Still, I wish that I could tell him about the plague ravishing through Oddfolk. We get waves of it. Sometimes it disappears for decades. The last time it happened, it broke a 100-year plague-free spell. I was 7, living safely behind the castle walls. My father is the Marquis of all Oddfolk, which makes him the most important person in the world, he says. The Mark's guard had warned us about going outside, and we locked up the gates. A week later, we received a letter detailing what was going on in town. Supposedly, the plague doctor had knocked on a farmer's door in the middle of the night, and the farmer had been unwilling or unable to pay him taxes. An angry crowd went to the man's door the next day. They dragged him out of his home and brought him to the town square, where he was hanged. It did not help. The plague doctor cursed us anyway. I think of the farmer often, of the doctor's black beak in the night. The farmer running to his penny jar and finding that there was nothing in it, because his daughter's shoes had holes in them, and she needed new ones. Because his wife had gone without food for days, or something else. The plague doctor staring, as the terrified farmer made excuses, and eventually turning his back and leaving, his dark cloak rising with the wind. We were stuck in the castle for weeks. There was plenty of food and water, and entertainment as well. I listened to radio dramas and read the stack of odd folk weeklies that my parents kept in their study. Our jester tried to keep up everyone's spirits and started entertaining the servants as well. All were worried for their families outside the castle walls. Our only concern was my older brother, who was out on an errand when the disease broke out. He returned one day, showed up at the gate. He was pale. His clothes were torn, and large red bumps filled with pus covered his arms and his face. The guards wouldn't let him in at first, didn't recognize him, but our mother did. She heard the commotion all the way from the south tower and ran to the gate. My father and I saw her running through the window in the hearth hall and followed her. "Let him in," she yelled. "That's my son, your future lord and master." The guards apologized and stepped aside. When my mother got to look upon my brother more closely, she screamed, and then she fainted. My father came by. He gave the guards the order to lock the gate and leave my brother out. Tears stained his eyes. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered, and he turned his back on him and looked towards me. "You are my heir now," he said, and he walked away. We never saw my brother again. We got lots of letters from outside at first, from the other counties of Oddfolk. Never from any other place in America. We do not deal with the outside frequently. I should have known that they did not have plague. The letters became fewer and fewer. I remember getting my hands on a particularly brutal one. Apparently, the North Harvest lands were quarantined. All the houses nailed shut, even the ones in which the residents weren't sick. Nobody was allowed to leave or enter the area. I could not sleep at night. I dreamed of the people dying in their homes, starving or succumbing to the welts and the pus and the smell of the sickness, lying down next to the corpses of their family members as they waited for death. Eventually, the letters ceased. My father decided they had to go out and evaluate the situation himself. He took my horse, Hollow, because she was always the calmest. My mother wanted him to take the automobile, but he said it would attract too much attention. He was devastated when he came back. He said that the streets were littered with corpses. He described it as a mass funeral. Everyone was either burying someone else or scavenging for food. Many were busy dying. All begged for food. Some of the farmers became angry and tried to attack my father. My father ordered the Marks Guard to spare their lives, for it was madness that made the men so wicked. It stopped eventually, the plague. A high knight from the marshlands brought word. The plague doctor had visited Garner Garvey, the earl and leader of this county. Once the plague doctor received a penny, he reportedly nodded. Earl Garvey claims that the plague doctor spoke to him, that the plague doctor had thanked him for finally paying odd folks' dues, and cackled. My father says that this is a lie, and that the plague doctor never speaks. Garner just likes to make up stories because he's 15, and the power has gone to his head. I don't know what to believe. Odd Folk was rebuilt after this wave of plague, and safety regulation tightened. We lost about 60% of the human population, and because our crops were neglected, a famine started that lasted for over a year. Sometimes I can't sleep at night when I think of the plague doctor. I know that the chances of him showing up here in California are astronomically small, but it could happen to any citizen of Odd Folk, and it often happens to those of high birth. I worry that if it happens, my roommate will open the door and dismiss the doctor as a person in a Hallows Eve type of costume. If that ever happens, California too will experience the curse of the Black Plague. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, shoutouts, and much more, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. It's a place where you can help support my channel while getting awesome rewards in the process, and every pledge helps out a ton, no matter the size. So if you'd like to see all the rewards I offer and consider becoming a patron, it'd mean a ton to me if you'd click the link in the description and just check it out. And don't forget to show some love to the amazingly talented authors who make these narrations possible. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.